Jeff Morgan. No, I really appreciate a lot of the stuff that you've talking about. Throughout history, we've seen a lot of socialists that have talked about children belonging to the state. And when you get to 1884, you had Friedrich Engels writing about the origins of the families. And what they've done, they looked at the family as being an instrument of oppression. And they wanted to make easy divorce. You've talked a little bit about easy divorce and stuff like that. What took place in the Bolshevik Revolution under Lenin was they basically destroyed the family. And when you look at what we have in Texas today, as far as divorce law is concerned, we have the perfect embodiment of what Engels and Marx and Lenin wanted to put into place. I hear people talking about I want to get married, but the first thing I have to do is say, how do I protect myself? And if I don't know how many of you have been to family courts to see what goes on, but it's horrible. So I guess with regard to policy suggestions, I'm advocating for the abolishment of unilateral, no-fault divorce, subjective divorce, and I don't see how, and I'd like to hear your feedback, how we can really be encouraging people to marry when they know that when they enter into marriage, under the current law system as it is right now, we're almost encouraging them to play Russian roulette with 3 chambers loaded. Does that make sense, what I'm asking?
Thank you for that question and that thought. I know that that's a little bit out of the bounds of kind of the discussion that we had today. By way of a very brief response, Brad, do you have any cursory thoughts on that?
No, I certainly think that kind of divorce law reform is part and parcel of the kinds of policy steps that need to take place to give people more security about kind of what their marriage offers them, what kind of security it provides them, legally and otherwise moving forward. So there's no doubt that in many states we've kind of come to a place where people are quite vulnerable to be, to being abandoned, by their spouse, and then to be treated unfairly too by the court system. So I don't think we're going to go back to the fault-based model that kind of, we saw prior to the 1970s in most states. But we could go forward to making some reforms that would sort of, I think, strengthen and stabilize family law and give marriage more kind of power in people's lives. And so, for instance, thinking about things like having, it depends on the state, but having a waiting period would be, I think, one step. Having a presumption of a kind of 50-50 custody would be another step to make marriage more valuable. And rethinking, how property division sort of plays out depending upon how the divorce itself happened would be the kinds of steps that we could take to, I think, make marriage stronger and to give people greater confidence in institutions. So, and there's certainly, I would expect in the next year or two, a number of kind of state-based efforts on this front to kind of move away from, I think, some of the extremes that we saw in the wake of the no-fault divorce revolution of the late 60s and the 1970s. But it's important, too, to note that divorce is down markedly since 1980. So it's the divorce rate's down 40% since 1980. And in my piece for The Atlantic, just mentioned that we have kind of seen divorce come down from that kind of 1 in 2 risk of divorce, where it was about 50% of marriages ending in divorce in the late 70s and early 1980s, to a point now where it's about 40% of marriages ending in divorce. That's still, in my estimation, too high, but we are projecting to a continuing decline in the divorce rate as well. So it's not the case that it's like Russian roulette in that sense. I mean, most marriages that are formed today are going to go the distance, and there are things that you can do, and I talk about them in my book, Get Married, that kind of further reduce your risk of ending up in divorce court. But I would agree with you that divorce, as it's now playing out in many states, is often unjust to the party who wishes to remain in the marriage and with the kids and the family, and we need to figure out ways to strengthen the institution going forward.